Hello and welcome to Ray of Light, a podcast all about writing, reading and happiness with myself, Eleanor Ray. As the nights grow longer and the festive lights start to twinkle, I'm excited to bring you my first ever special Christmas episode. I write books that are about finding light in dark times and the strength in vulnerability. Perfect for cozy winter evenings with a cup of something warm. But my next guest has written something even more Christmassy and much darker. I'm thrilled to welcome Chris McDonald, who writes his Christmas crime books as Chris Frost. His second festive thriller, The Christmas Tree Killer, has just been published. Set against snow-swept landscapes and featuring a killer who leaves chilling gifts under the Christmas tree, it's the perfect read for anyone who likes a little holiday suspense alongside their mince pie. Thank you so much for joining us, Chris.
Thanks for having me.
Now, you write under two names, Festively under Chris Frost, and The Christmas Tree Killer is your second Christmas crime novel. Can you tell us a little bit more about that book and about what drew you to writing festive thrillers?
The Christmas Tree Killer is the second in the D.I. Tom Stoneham series, the first of which was The Killer's Christmas List. The second one is, it can be read as a standalone, so, you don't have to know anything about Tom. In the first chapter, there's a woman called Madison who's a hiker who wants to trek the Pennine Way, and she's just outside the town of Holt, which is sort of in the centre of England towards Carlisle, up near the Scottish border. And even though it's snowy and it's blowing a gale and things like that, she decides to carry on. And about halfway through it, the conditions are worse than she thought, so actually she's going to turn back. And as she does, she spies this present under one of the fir trees, and she figures that it's probably from her fiancé because, it's desolate and no one else knows she's here. She thinks it's going to be a fleece or a new pair of boots or something like that. But when she goes and grabs it, she's hit by a pretty horrible smell, and a drop of blood pools out of a hole in it. And the first word of the second chapter is a foot. So you quickly realise that it is someone has wrapped a foot. And there was a gift tag on it for Madison, so it was definitely for her. So Tom, who's usually based over Newcastle way, has been asked to go and lend this sort of smaller team his expertise in the hunt for a killer or someone that delivers festive, horrible presents.
I love it. And I have to say, I really enjoyed your book. And I love that moment where she got that present. And what I found most chilling was that it said her name on it. It had a gift tag for her. Like, ugh. Yeah, I don't know whether it's better to find a foot that it's addressed to you or a foot that's not addressed to you. I think I'd rather one not.
It's a great, you could do a poll and see what people's thoughts are.
Brilliant idea. Now, your first Christmas book was a hit with readers. How did that story lead you to this one? And is there something special about Christmas that really called to you?
The first one was sort of a leap into the unknown because I'd never had a pseudonym before, and it was with a new publisher. Previously, I'd been with an indie publisher, Red Dog Press, who I absolutely loved. And then this opportunity came along to go to Harper North. And it was a much bigger machine, so there were lots of discussions with editors about, what the story would be and the tone and things like that. So it was a really interesting way to do it. And yeah, sort of building Tom was a really fun thing to do because the story called for a specific type of person. So building Tom to be in the role that he needed to be was really fun. The first one went down really well, and I really loved writing it, and the reactions were just fantastic. And then as I started to write the second one in January 24, and my vision was really blurry, and I was having a sort of not a very nice time in my body. And the next day after writing it, I took myself to hospital, and I was very quickly diagnosed with type 1 diabetes.
Oh my goodness.
So my vision was like, I thought I was going blind and all kinds of stuff. Harper North were amazing because I left a big gaping hole in their Christmas schedule for 2024, but then we delayed it by a year and I got on track. And obviously, without giving spoilers, something happens at the end of the first book that leaves Tom in a sort of a position where he could have gone out of the police or stayed in, and taking him out of where the first book happened to somewhere else was a move that I thought would be good. He's seeing a therapist, and he sort of suggests, walking and getting out into open spaces would be good for him. So this opportunity to, I mean, it's not an amazing opportunity to go investigate someone who's leaving, body parts for people. But it meant getting out of where he was and where the action of the first book had happened. And I quite like when books move around. So I thought it was quite a good opportunity to go and explore a different place.
Yes, I love the change in atmosphere. I haven't read the first book yet. I'm going to for this Christmas. But it's nice to take characters from a particular setting and put somewhere with a bit more space. We'll get on to what kind of makes you happy as an author later. But one thing that a lot of authors have said to me is just getting outside and walking and being in the fresh air is great. It brings them a lot of joy. And hopefully it does for D.I. Tom Stoneham as well, although albeit littered with packages filled with body parts. Now, he has to navigate this very terrifying case in a very atmospheric environment, as we've discussed. How do you approach your character development when he's in this intense situation? You've mentioned getting him some therapy already. What else do you do to kind of help him along this festive route?
Well, at the start, I thought it was just going to be him. So in the first book, there's a team, and often in detective books, the team don't get on for a bit of tension. But I decided quite early on that the team were going to get on. So in the first book, they're all really good friends. He's kind of new to the area, but he's welcomed in, and everyone gets on. And that was quite important to me because I wanted to do something a little bit different. In the second one, my original intention was to take him up somewhere else alone and have him have to go through this investigation by himself. But when I came to writing it, his partner, DS Lauren Ray, it felt weird without her. And I thought I really liked writing her. In the first book, she plays an important part. So I thought when it came to writing this, actually, I felt like Tom probably would have said, "Can Lauren come?" So I kind of felt like it was important that if the team weren't going to be in it, someone familiar was. So I thought it was important that she was there for a little bit of almost like an emotional crutch at times for him.
Yes.
Someone they'd be able to bounce ideas off and things like that, especially with the people that they meet when they're there that he maybe doesn't get on quite so well with.
Yes. I like having people getting on because, as I said, I write quite uplifting stuff. I've still got plenty of conflict in there, but especially when you're writing a Christmas book, you've got very dark things happening in a festive atmosphere. Do you think something about wanting people to get on at Christmas might have influenced that decision at all?
I think so, and I think the fact that there's so much tension and
Mm,
bloodshed elsewhere. I think when people come to work, they should. I know people at work don't get on, but in my book, I thought it was important that kind of all the horrible stuff happened outside the work walls, and when they were together, they were a good team that could sort of bounce ideas off each other and things like that. So yeah, I felt like sometimes if I read a book and it's just like constant bickering everywhere, it's like where's the downtime? Or
yes.
if I went to work and I was constantly bickering with people, I'd just think, well, I'd leave, or I can't be bothered with this. So yeah, I kind of wanted to be that juxtaposition of happy work, horrible investigation.
Yes. So can you tell me a little bit about your path to publication, how you started off and then how you made this journey to being a full-time writer?
Yeah. So probably about 15 years ago, when I was at uni, I had an initial idea for a chapter of a book, and it was I saw it as a kind of film. So it was an ice rink. There was a body on it, and I saw like the camera rise to show the very bright white of the ice with red spreading across it,
Lovely.
and this body in the middle. And I'd been reading it. Crime had always been my genre that I enjoyed reading, so I had that idea, and I thought, well, I'd quite like to write that. I was studying English as well as teaching at the time, but because authors were my rock stars or the people that I looked up to, I thought, well, someone like me can't just sit down and write a chapter of a book. Like that's a job that, you know, very famous people do. So I put it away for maybe like 13 years or so. And then when I moved up to Manchester, I started playing five-a-side football with these guys. And about 4 weeks in, I heard two of them discussing books, and I quickly found out that they were authors. And I thought, well, if they can, if they're just normal people I'm playing football with, if they can have a go at writing a book, then maybe I can too. So I sort of dug this idea out of my memory again, and went home and wrote that chapter. And thought, this is kind of out of my system now. What's the point in writing a whole book? Because no one will ever read it, and it's a massive waste of my time, or so I thought. So I kind of left it, and then a few days later, obviously my brain had been working, and I thought, oh, well, I kind of know what would happen in chapter 2 now, and I kind of just went like that, and I wrote and I wrote, and when it was finished, I didn't know anything about editing, agents, how it all worked. So I sent it to a publisher that was accepting, unsolicited manuscript. I sent it to a few, maybe 3 or 4, and Red Dog got back in touch and he said, I love it and, we'd love to publish it and things like that. So I said yes. And then about 4 weeks later, I got my first edits back. And I, I remember sending my wife, he told me he loved this book and look how much he wants me to change. And I was like, so I'm
Oh,
not doing it. I've not signed a contract, I'm not changing it. And she was like, well, think about it. He knows what he's talking about. So
she
I
sounds very
left it for
wise, your wife.
yeah, she's like the voice on my shoulder that's like, just take a moment. So yeah, I took a moment and I went back to the email and thought, well, actually, he's right about that. And he's, yeah, and every point he made, I agreed with. So yeah, that came out in February 2020, just as lockdown was about to hit.
It's a
So I
Chris
didn't see
McDonald
any.
book.
It was, yeah. So my first 10 were Chris McDonald books. So I did a trilogy of police procedurals with Erica Piper in them. I did 6 cozy crime novellas set in a fictional Northern Irish town. And then I did a private investigator book set in Denver, in America. And then Red Dog sadly closed,
Yeah.
shut up shop. And around that time, I'd been talking to an editor at Harper Collins called Daisy. And from that, then Chris Frost was born. And yeah, so we've done 2 of those. There's a third one on the way next Christmas, and yeah, that brings us up to today.
Excellent. And now you write full time on your novels and also writing for podcasts.
Yeah, so I started off as a writer for podcasts, and then I'm now a producer. So I sort of do a lot of behind the scenes organization. So it means that I don't get burnt out with words, which is quite a nice
Yes.
thing. Sort of doing a day job, and I'm very blessed to do it. Where I was writing full time, I'd have dinner, then I'd change to writing fiction. And I loved it, and it was everything I thought it would be. But this gives me a little bit more headspace
Oh
for
yeah.
just the words for my novels.
Yeah, that's nice. I started writing while I was also working full time. And I wasn't just writing, but I worked in financial marketing. So it's quite a lot of writing. And I'd go from writing a marketing brochure for some kind of financial product, and then I'd switch to writing a writing a book. And it's very physically the same. So what I found is I'd sit at my desk during the day and write, and then to get home to trick myself that I was doing something else, I'd recline on my sofa and balance my laptop on my lap and write that way so that I just felt like I wasn't doing exactly the same thing for hours and hours and hours and hours. But
It's
yeah,
a
it's
good
tricky.
idea.
Yeah, I write full time now, which is much nicer, and I've got 3 little kids, so they provide the distractions and the physically different thing to do. Tell me about your writing day.
I work sort of 9 to 5 on the podcast stuff. That's my day job. In that, I go and pick up the children and take them to school and things like that. And then probably, luckily, my children have always gone to bed. And I'm going to say this and it's going to change. But when they were babies, they'd go to bed at like 7 and pretty much sleep through. So it
I'm
meant that I
trying
could
not to
get
look
started.
really jealous.
I know everyone hates me for it. And they still go to bed by like half 7. So it kind of means that once they're in bed, I can kind of come in here and I've got a writing playlist that's a bit Pavlovian, so that as soon as I hear the first notes, always the same first song, it gets me into that zone.
Oh, that's a really good tip. I'd never thought of that. Ah,
Yeah, it's a strange thing, and it's all instrumental because I've tried writing with, I could never focus if there were words in it, so it's all
yes.
kind of instrumental guitars and atmospheric. So yeah, the first song is a song called This by a band called This Will Destroy You, and yeah, it works every time. Yeah, yeah.
Saw that heavy metal is actually one of your passions. Do you think it influences your writing at all?
Maybe, yeah. When I was younger, especially, I was into properly heavy stuff, and a lot of it is about blood and violence. And I've mellowed now. I still listen to it a bit, but I've recently started a sort of pop punk band, so like
Oh
Blink
wow.
182, Green Day, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
I think I've definitely mellowed in my sort of middle age.
Oh wow. Brilliant. Now, getting back to your writing, what part of the writing process brings you the most joy?
Wow, that's a great question. I think it's changed, When I sort of didn't know what I was doing with my first couple of books, I wasn't a plotter at all. So I'd write a chapter, I'd leave it a few days to see what my brain would come up with. I'd write the next chapter, which was an exciting way of doing it because you never knew where you were going. But it meant that once you got to the end, there was so much editing to do because connections between chapters, or if you did a clue in chapter 5 but never mentioned it again, I find it meant that there was a lot of backwards work at the end. It's my fear with plotting was that it would take the fun out of the writing because you're kind of just transcribing what you've already thought of previously. But actually sitting down now with kind of a chapter that I know roughly what's going to happen saves a load of procrastination. I can kind of sit down and I can get on with it, and I know where it's going, but I've left myself enough leeway to take it in a specific way. Or I always think I don't want to swear, but when people say the characters do stuff that you didn't expect them to do, you're like, well, they're in your head. But genuinely, it happens, where it's like, oh, well, I thought I was going to, go down this alley, but actually we're going down this one. And there's still enough of leeway in the plotting to not take the fun out of that side of things. Um, I think just the actual sitting down, creating something that hasn't existed before is like a really strange way to spend your time. But I don't know, it just feels like the fun of it hasn't left yet. And I don't know, hopefully it never will. I'm also a massive fan of the edit. I love working on things because I think sometimes we're so in our own heads that we think, well, I've explained that well enough because I know what it means. But when someone else reads it, and you obviously haven't, so I really like the collaboration side of it. Of you've given them something, and they're suggesting small fixes here and there. So yeah, kind of the whole process, which is a really wide answer. So I'm sorry, but I just every process of it or every part of it, still excites me.
I love that. I love that. Finding the joy in everything that you do. But I am going to press you. What's the hardest part when you write? Is there something that you do find quite difficult? And if so, how do you get through it?
I think deciding what to write next. Almost, I know
Mhm.
that's sort of dictated by publishing schedules and contracts, and if you've signed a 2 book deal, the hard part sometimes is you have to write that, but there's an idea that you've thought of that you're so excited about that no one else knows about because it's going to be 5 or 6 books down the line if it ever happens at all. So kind of having this big sort of document of ideas that are waiting and will be waiting for years is a frustrating. Well, I don't know if frustrating is the right word, but that you can't get to them right now. I'm quite an impatient person, and when I want to
Mhm.
do something, I will work to make that happen.
Okay. So you have a big document of ideas. That's interesting because some of my other guests, their biggest writing fear is running out of ideas, not knowing what to write next, which hasn't happened. They've all written loads of books, loads of brilliant books. But you have a little dossier of things you want to write?
Yeah, it's just in my notes section on my phone. So I literally
Okay.
will write down a few sentences about, journalist in America investigating this, and it's that small. And sometimes they might come to absolutely nothing once I dig into it a bit deeper. So, but yeah, the fear of sort of being put on the spot for an idea, I can imagine would be quite terrifying.
So one of the reasons I write is because I rarely have to be put on the spot. I always have time to think and digest and prepare something. I hate pitching my own ideas. I can put them in a document. So I can read you out the document. Hit my publisher going, oh great. But it's always fun. So I wanted to ask you, we've talked a bit about your writing process. Do you have any tips for aspiring authors? Any advice you'd give to someone who wants to write a book, think there's a book in them but hasn't quite got there yet? What do you suggest?
I think just doing it, and a lot of people will have an idea, but actually just having that discipline to sit down and slog away at 80,000, 90,000 words is a daunting task. I don't know if I have it handy here. So what I do is at the start of a book, I print off these, and it's a really lo-fi way. So each one says 500. So when I write 500 words, I color in a box,
Oh, lovely.
and it's really manageable. But the endorphin hit is like what I imagine hard drugs is like. So I highlight it, I write the date on it, and then very quickly you build it up. And some days when I think I cannot be bothered today, I think, well, I could do one 500 box. And that very quickly sometimes leads to, 1,000 words, 1,500, a chapter.
I love that. I can
So I
see
think,
I was about to say I could see the primary school teacher in you coming out.
yeah,
And
it
then you
is.
mentioned the
Yeah.
hard drugs, so maybe not.
Also a very primary school teacher thing, yeah.
Brilliant. I love that. And if
Um,
anyone wants to have a look at that who's listening, you can check out the full video on my YouTube channel at Eleanor Ray Books if you'd like to see Chris's colouring sheet there. So you think just get on with it, write 500 words at a time. Don't worry about getting a whole novel written at first. Is that what you'd say to someone starting out?
yeah, the advice I remember at the start during my first book was, I think it was from John Connolly or Michael Connolly, one of the big Connollys. And I read it somewhere that they said, if you move your story on a little bit each day, doesn't matter if it's a sentence or a page or a chapter, what just moving your story on is the important thing and keeping the momentum. Um,
Yeah, I think that's great advice. I trick myself as well. I'll write notes about what I'm going to write, and then I won't delete them from the document until I've got a certain number of words, so it doesn't feel like I'm losing something. Keep on moving
yeah,
forwards. And if I edit something, if I take something out, I get really depressed if I then see the word count shrink. So I just kind of copy and paste it into the bottom of the document, and because maybe I'll use it later, but it tricks me. And then I have a depressing moment at the end where I have a big chunk of words. I was like, oh no, that is actually coming out. It's getting shorter. But often by that point, you've got enough for a novel anyway, so it's all right. Now, you must love to read. Most writers do. Is there a book you've read recently that you really loved, but maybe something that isn't a bestseller, something we won't all have heard of, that you really think deserves a bit more attention than it's had?
there's a series that I love, and the third one came out recently. It's by Jonathan Ames, who wrote You Were Never Really Here, which was a short novella. And it was turned into a film starring Joaquin Phoenix. He released this book called A Man Named Doll. And it's a PI book set in America, in LA. And the main character is called Happy Doll. And it's funny, but it's dark and it's violent, and it's really hard to explain, but the three books are just some of the best fiction I've ever read. He's an incredible author because he's written this, but he's also written a book called Wake Up, Sir, which is kind of like a Jeeves and Wooster book.
Okay. Jeeves and Wooster.
Which, and it is hilarious. He's obsessed with this woman with the best nose he's ever seen, and his whole the whole book is about him trying to find her, but again it veers into violence and drugs, and I just think he's such a unique author that whatever he turns his hand to, he pulls off. And it's published by Pushkin Vertigo, so it's not like a massively well-known series, I don't think. So if more people could read that, then that would make me happy.
Great tip. Thank you very much. Now, talking of happiness, apart from writing, we've heard you enjoy pretty much every stage of the process. What else do you enjoy in life? What brings you happiness?
Good question. It's strange, since I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, it sort of makes you see life when you've been in a hospital bed fading differently. And so I try to sort of say yes to lots of things. And most recently, I was in a band at uni. So like, yeah, maybe 15, 16 years ago. And I loved it. And I sort of stopped playing guitar for a while. And then about a year ago, maybe not even that, I put out this ad on Facebook on a Manchester Musicians Wanted saying, does anyone fancy playing some pop punk from our teenage years? We've had about 7 or 8 practices and we played our first gig recently, but playing music again with people that were strangers but that are now very considered very good friends has filled me with so much joy. I thought I'd be terrified going on stage again as a sort of nearly 40-year-old man with a bad back and all that. But it's just been so much fun. So that is a big thing at the moment in my life, where we've got gigs coming up and we're discussing songs, and it's just about sort of reliving those teenage years of discovery. So that's been fun. I do enjoy going outside. I cannot stand gardening, so my outside is. I'm scared of every insect going. So I say I like going outside, but and I'm because I'm Northern Irish. Well, I don't know if it's because I'm Northern Irish, but that's what I blame it on. But I don't like being hot either. So once it gets to about 15 degrees, I'm sweating. So kind of the summertime when all the insects are out and the sun's out is my worst time of year. So as we approach the blackness of winter, this is when I come into my happy time.
So you like being outside in very carefully controlled conditions.
Yeah. Yeah.
Brilliant.
If the moon could be out at about 4 p.m., I'm over it.
Okay, great. And do you have any tips specifically for the festive season? You're a Christmas expert now. Now you've written your Christmas books. Any tips for getting through Christmas? Preferably without chopping off
Yes.
body parts and wrapping them up.
Yeah. Yeah. Tip one: if it looks foot shaped, don't open it. Or call the police first. And so I'd say even though families might drive each other crazy at some point with being in a combustible house with stressed people cooking and stuff, I think it's just embracing all that stuff. I realize now that my children are 9 and 7, or will be at Christmas, and the things that they're choosing for Christmas are changing, and it's very quickly made me realize that things change really quickly, and I think it's just about sort of being in that moment and embracing everything that comes with it.
Yes. So, can you tell us a little bit about upcoming projects? What do you have coming up next?
So yes, as I mentioned, there will be a Christmas book 3 that has not been announced anywhere yet, so don't tell anyone.
You heard it here first.
And then yeah, and then so that'll be around this time next year, sometime in November, and then in June, I think it is May or June. There's a new series that Harper and North have bought, and it's going to be under Chris McDonald. It's a PI series set in Manchester about a man called Ethan who wins the lottery, goes home to tell his wife about his or their, I think 9 point something million win. And when he goes in, she's dead at the bottom of the stairs.
Yeah.
So from the outset, there's suspicion in him when he opens up his private investigation firm a few months later. But he only did it. No, he only opened the firm because he wants answers for people like he wants answers for himself.
Oh, it's really exciting. I love that. I love that premise. Really interesting. Winning the lottery and then finding your wife dead. Ooh. Oh, I love it.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to that one.
I'll be sure. I'll be sure to get you a copy. It's called The Wrong Man.
Thank you very much. The Wrong Man. Brilliant. Thank you. Thank you so much, Chris. And thank you to you for listening. The Christmas Tree Killer, Chris's second festive thriller, is available now. Perfect to curl up with on a snowy evening or give as a slightly spine-tingling gift for the Christmas book lover in your life. So, if you've enjoyed Ray of Light, please do like and subscribe for more. You can find me at Eleanor Ray Books across Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. And if you're listening and would like to see it in full video glory, you can check out my YouTube channel. And please do reach out and let me know your thoughts. I love hearing from you, especially as we get into the festive season. If you've liked what you heard, you might like what I write too. It's uplifting book club fiction, stories like Everything is Beautiful and See the Stars that spark deep conversations and bring a little hope and light to the long winter nights. We have one more special Christmas episode coming this December, so stay tuned for more festive tips on writing, reading, and happiness.